My name is Chandra, and 3 years ago my father-in-law Arthur humiliated me at a crowded family gala. He slid a $500 check across the white tablecloth and told me to buy some decent clothes so I wouldn't embarrass his son in front of their partners. My sister-in-law Megan laughed. My husband looked at his plate and said absolutely nothing. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I quietly folded the check, slid it into my purse and walked out. What they didn't know, what nobody in that room knew, was that I was already building a quiet portfolio. 3 years later, their family development company was bleeding out, facing a $4.2 million loan default. They came begging to a boutique private equity firm for a lifeline. They had no idea the principal partner sitting across the mahogany table, holding the capital that could save or sink their entire legacy, was me. Before I take you back to that dinner, please take a moment to hit like and subscribe. It really helps the channel. And drop a comment below. Where are you watching from and what time is it there? Now, let me take you back to the night I stopped trying to be good enough for their family. Let me give you the geography of this family so you understand exactly what I was dealing with. My husband's family practically owned the regional commercial real estate market. My father-in-law, Arthur, ran the family and the company like he was the undisputed alpha of a pack. He didn't just want respect. He demanded absolute loyalty, constant praise, and immediate submission. If you didn't fit into his specific outdated narrative structure, you were worthless to him. Then there was his golden child, Megan. Megan was 28 and was handed a vice president title straight out of a degree she barely finished. While I was pulling 14-hour shifts, Megan spent her days using company funds to redesign the atmospheric lighting in her corner office. She would take 3-hour lunches to complain about her stressful workload, completely oblivious to the fact that her only real job was spending the money other people earned. I came from an entirely different world. I didn't have a trust fund or a safety net. I grew up understanding that if you want to survive, you learn to read the numbers and optimize your own growth. While Megan was treating the company credit card like her personal piggy bank, I was quietly building a standardized format engine for my own wealth. I spent my nights reverse engineering market trends, analyzing digital growth metrics, and looking for the curiosity gaps in emerging markets that everyone else was missing. My husband was caught in the middle, but he always defaulted to making excuses for them. It's just how Arthur operates, Chandra. You have to understand the pressure he's under, he'd say. My husband was so used to bowing his head to his father's presence that he forgot how to stand up straight for his own wife. He let Arthur treat me like an unpaid intern. When we visited their estate for Sunday dinners, Megan would literally hand me her empty wine glass as if I were the waitstaff. Arthur would introduce me to his country club friends by saying, "This is Chandra. She's still trying to keep up with our pace." I didn't argue. I didn't throw a fit. I just quietly went back to my laptop. I was utilizing advanced data models to storyboard my own future, projecting the exact intervals where their heavy overhead ego-driven business model would inevitably collapse. I knew their portfolio was rotting from the inside out. They were all flash, zero retention. But I kept my mouth shut. I let them think I was exactly what they saw, a nobody in a cheap dress who didn't belong in their world. I was just biding my time, waiting for the math to catch up to their ego. The night that changed everything was Arthur's 60th birthday gala. It wasn't just a party, it was a performance. The ballroom was draped in gold and white, filled with the city's elite, investors, developers, and politicians. I had spent weeks preparing for it. I didn't have the $5,000 wardrobe budget that Megan had, but I had found a classic floor-length midnight blue gown on sale. I'd spent hours on my own hair and makeup, trying to look the part of a supportive daughter-in-law. As we arrived, I could feel the alpha energy radiating from Arthur. He stood at the center of the room, holding a glass of vintage scotch, surrounded by his pack. When he saw us, his eyes didn't land on my face. They scanned my dress, my shoes, and my jewelry with the clinical coldness of an appraiser looking at a foreclosure. Megan was standing right next to him, wearing a designer piece that probably cost more than my first car. She smirked the moment I got within earshot. "Oh, Chandra," she said, loud enough for the nearby table of city council members to hear. "That's such a brave choice for a gala. It's so vintage of you to keep wearing the same outfit from the charity auction last year." I felt the blood rush to my cheeks. "It's a different dress, Megan," I said quietly, trying to keep my voice steady. Arthur didn't even acknowledge my response. He just sighed, a deep, performative sound of disappointment. He reached into the inner pocket of his tuxedo, pulled out a checkbook and scribbled something down. The room seemed to go quiet, as if everyone sensed a scene was about to happen. "Chandra," Arthur said, his voice booming with a fake, paternal warmth that felt like ice. "I realized something today. Our family name represents a certain standard of excellence. It's clear that Mark hasn't been providing you with an adequate allowance for your personal upkeep. It reflects poorly on us when you look like you're struggling." He slid a check for $500 across the table. Came to rest right next to my salad fork. "Take this," he said. "Go to the boutiques Megan uses tomorrow. Buy something that doesn't make it look like we found you on the street. I won't have my business partners wondering if our family is having liquidity issues because my daughter-in-law can't afford a tailor." The humiliation was absolute. It wasn't just the money. It was the implication that I was a blemish on their polished surface, a charity case they were forced to tolerate. I looked at the check, then up at my husband. He wouldn't look at me. He was staring at a spot on the tablecloth, his jaw tight but his lips sealed. He didn't say, "Father, that's enough." He didn't say, "My wife looks beautiful." He just sat there, terrified of losing his place in his father's shadow. Megan let out a sharp, mocking giggle. "Go on, Chandra. Take it. It's more than you make in a month of your little data projects, right?" In that moment, something shifted inside me. The years of trying to be the good girl, the years of trying to earn their respect through silence and hard work, they all evaporated. I realized that to them I wasn't a person. I was a variable that didn't fit their equation. I didn't make a scene. I didn't throw the wine. I reached out, picked up the check and looked Arthur dead in the eye. I didn't see a powerful man anymore. I saw a man who was so insecure about his own legacy that he had to bully a woman half his age to feel like a king. "Thank you, Arthur," I said, my voice eerily calm. "I'll make sure this money goes exactly where it needs to go." I stood up, tucked the check into my clutch and walked out of the ballroom. I didn't wait for my husband. I didn't look back at the whispering tables. I walked straight to the parking valet, got into my car and drove to the small office I'd rented in secret 3 months prior. I sat in the dark for a long time watching the city lights. I took the $500 check out and looked at it. To Arthur, this was a tip to a waitress. To me, it was the final piece of evidence I needed. I opened my laptop and pulled up the financial analysis I'd been working on. Arthur's company, the one he was so proud of, was over-leveraged on a massive luxury development downtown. They had assumed the market would stay hot forever. But my data models, my little projects, showed a massive correction coming in the next 18 months. They were building a palace on a foundation of sand. I didn't cry that night. I didn't even feel sad. I felt a cold, mechanical clarity. They wanted to treat me like an outsider? Fine. I would become the outsider they never saw coming. I started a new folder on my desktop. I didn't name it Revenge. I named it Investment Capital. Arthur thought he was buying my silence for $500. He had no idea he had just handed me the motivation to buy his entire world out from under him. The clock was officially ticking, and for the first time in 3 years I was the one holding the stopwatch. I didn't go back to the house that night. I didn't even go back for my things. I stayed in a hotel, and the next morning I sent Mark a single text. "The check is on the nightstand. I'm done being the budget in your family's balance sheet." I didn't cash that $500 check for a dress. Instead, I used it to pay the incorporation fees for a new venture. I called it Vindication Capital. It was a small, quiet firm that focused on the one thing Arthur and Megan were too arrogant to understand: digital leverage. While Arthur was busy shouting at contractors and Megan was posting photos of her executive lunches, I was operating in the shadows. I spent the next 3 years utilizing the same little projects they mocked to build a high-retention investment engine. I didn't need a golden office or a country club membership. I had data. I had search engine optimization strategies that allowed me to identify failing assets before the owners even knew they were in trouble. I reverse-engineered the very market Arthur thought he owned. By the end of year 1, I had moved from a one-room office to a suite in the city's most prestigious tech hub. By year 2, my firm was managing a quiet portfolio of $15 million. I was the silent partner in 3 major developments that were directly competing with Arthur's firm. Meanwhile, Arthur's alpha leadership was finally hitting a wall. His refusal to adapt to new market metrics meant his luxury developments were sitting empty. His retention rate was plummeting. Megan, in her infinite wisdom, had convinced him to pour their remaining liquid capital into a lifestyle center that was effectively a ghost town before the ribbon was even cut. They were hemorrhaging cash. They were over-leveraged, underperforming, and desperate. I watched it all through the data. I tracked their decline like a hawk. Every time they missed a quarterly projection, I made a note. Every time Arthur had to sell off a piece of his legacy to cover a loan, I was the one indirectly buying the debt through third-party subsidiaries. They had no idea that the nobody they had humiliated was now the primary stakeholder in their largest outstanding loan. Then the call came. It wasn't from Mark. He had spent the last 3 years drifting, still living off his father's dwindling reputation. No, the call came from Arthur's lead counsel. They were looking for a discreet investor to provide a $4.2 million infusion to prevent a total foreclosure on their flagship property. They had been rejected by every major bank in the state. They were at the end of the rope. They scheduled the meeting at my firm's headquarters. They were told they would be meeting with the principal partner. On the morning of the meeting, I wore the same midnight blue dress I had worn to the gala 3 years ago. I didn't need a new one. This one was already paid for in full by the lessons I'd learned that night. I sat in my office, the atmospheric lighting dimmed just enough to catch the city skyline behind me. On my desk sat a single framed item, the original $500 check Arthur had slid across the table at the gala. I had never cashed it. I didn't need his money, I just needed the reminder of why I started. When the heavy mahogany doors opened, Arthur walked in first. He looked older, tired. His alpha posture was gone, replaced by the slumped shoulders of a man who was losing his grip. Megan followed behind him, clutching a designer bag that was likely the last expensive thing she owned. They didn't recognize me at first. I was sitting with my back to the door looking out at the city. "Thank you for seeing us," Arthur said, his voice raspy. "We've heard your firm is aggressive with its capital. We're prepared to offer a significant equity stake in our downtown development for the $4.2 million. I slowly turned the chair around. The silence that hit the room was absolute. It was the kind of silence that happens right before a building collapses. Megan's jaw literally dropped. Arthur's face went from a pale gray to a deep, panicked red. He looked at me, then at the nameplate on my desk, then back at me. "Chandra," he whispered. I didn't smile. I didn't gloat. I just leaned forward and tapped the glass of the framed $500 check. "Hello, Arthur," I said, my voice as calm as a predator in the tall grass. "I see you're still having some liquidity issues. I hope you're wearing something decent today, because this meeting is going to be very expensive." Megan was the first one to find her voice, though it was high and brittle. She let out a sharp, nervous laugh, clutching her bag so tight her knuckles turned white. "Chandra, is this a joke? I mean, nice office, really. Did you rent this for the day? Is this some kind of pathetic fake it till you make it stunt to get back at us for the gala?" I didn't answer her. I didn't even look at her. I kept my eyes on Arthur. He was staring at the framed $500 check on my desk as if it were a poisonous snake. The alpha of the family was trembling. "You're the principal partner of Vindication?" Arthur asked, his voice barely a whisper. "The one who's been buying up the secondary debt on the Northview project?" "I am," I said. I reached into my desk drawer and pulled out a thick gray manila folder. I slid it across the mahogany surface. It landed with a heavy thud right in front of him. "And I'm not here to fake anything, Megan. I'm here because your father's company is currently in a state of mechanical failure. You've spent 3 years treating the business like a personal playground, and now the ride is over." Arthur opened the folder with shaking hands. Inside were the receipts, the audited financial statements, the debt acquisition papers, and the performance metrics of his own firm compared to mine. "6 months ago," I continued, my voice steady and clinical, "your primary lender started looking for an exit strategy. They didn't think you could meet the balloon payment on the downtown development. They were right. I didn't just start a firm, Arthur. I built a standardized format engine for acquiring distressed assets. I saw the curiosity gap in your portfolio, the space between what you told the world you were worth and the actual retention of your tenants. You were bleeding out, and I was the one who bought the bandages." Megan leaned over, looking at the documents. This says you own the lien on the estate. The family house. You can't do that. That's our home. It was an asset used as collateral for a failing business model, I said simply. And since you've been using company funds to pay for your lifestyle expenses, the wardrobe, the travel, the $12,000 atmospheric lighting in an office that produces zero revenue, you've effectively handed me the keys to your front door. Arthur looked up from the papers, his face pale. "Chandra, listen. We're family. I know things were tense. That night at the gala, I was under a lot of pressure. I was trying to protect the image of the company. You have to understand." "I understand perfectly," I interrupted. "You saw me as a variable that didn't fit your narrative structure. You thought $500 was enough to keep me in my place. But while you were focused on protecting the image, I was focused on the infrastructure. You taught me something that night, Arthur. You taught me that in your world, people are only as valuable as the capital they control. So I took your advice. I optimized." I leaned back in my chair, the city skyline reflected in the glass of the office walls. "You came here today for a $4.2 million investment," I said. "You wanted a lifeline. But looking at these numbers, an investment would be a waste of my growth metrics. Your company isn't an asset anymore. It's a liability. And I don't invest in liabilities." "What are you saying?" Megan snapped, her eyes darting around the room as if looking for an exit. "You're just going to let us lose everything? After everything our family did for you?" "Your family didn't do anything for me," I reminded her. "You tolerated me until you thought I was a burden, and then you publicly humiliated me to feel superior. Well, the market has corrected itself. I'm not here to save your company, Arthur. I'm here to inform you that Vindication Capital will be initiating foreclosure proceedings on the Northview project and the estate starting at 9 a.m. tomorrow." Arthur slumped back in his chair. The man who had once commanded rooms with a single look now looked like he couldn't even command his own breath. He looked at the $500 check again, the tip he had given me to buy a dress. "I'll give you one piece of advice for free," I said, sliding the check across the desk toward him. "Take this. It won't save your company, and it certainly won't save your house. But it's exactly what you told me it was. Enough to buy some decent clothes. You're going to need them for the bankruptcy hearings." The aftermath was not a loud explosion. It was a slow, agonizing crawl toward the inevitable. By 10 a.m. the next morning, the legal machinery I had spent years fine-tuning began to grind Arthur's empire into dust. Because I held the primary debt and the liens on their personal properties, there was no room for negotiation. There were no family favors left to call in. Arthur tried to fight it at first. He hired a high-priced defense team to challenge the debt acquisition, but my receipts were ironclad. Every document was triple verified, every signature was authentic. When the court finally ruled in favor of Vindication Capital, the sound of the gavel felt like the closing of a chapter one had been writing since that night at the gala. The estate, the massive cold house where I had been made to feel like a guest in my own life, was vacated within 30 days. I didn't keep it. I had no interest in living in a monument to someone else's ego. I sold it to a nonprofit that converted the grounds into a community center. Watching the alpha of the family carry his remaining belongings out in cardboard boxes was the final silent proof that power built on humiliation is nothing more than a house of cards. Meghan's downfall was perhaps the most poetic. Without the vice president title and the company credit card, her social circle evaporated overnight. The friends she had bought with expensive lunches and gala tables stopped answering her texts. She tried to pivot to being a lifestyle influencer, but without the luxury backdrop provided by her father's money, her engagement metrics bottomed out. Last I heard, she was working as a junior floor manager at a retail boutique, the very kind of place she used to claim was beneath our family name. Then there was Mark. He came to my office one last time, a few weeks after the foreclosure was finalized. He didn't come with anger. He came with that same quiet, slumped posture he'd had at the dinner table 3 years ago. "Chandra," he said, standing in the doorway of the office he now knew I owned. "I'm sorry. I should have said something that night. I should have stood up to him. I was raised to believe he was invincible. I thought if I stayed quiet I could protect you." I looked at him, and for the first time I didn't feel the sting of betrayal. I just felt a profound sense of distance. "Mark," I said, my voice calm and final. "Silence isn't protection. It's permission. You didn't stay quiet to protect me. You stayed quiet to protect your inheritance. And now that the inheritance is gone, you're looking for a new place to hide. But I'm not a shelter anymore. I'm the storm." I didn't give him a second chance. I didn't offer him a job. I simply wished him luck and watched him walk out of my life just as I had walked out of that gala. My name is Chandra. 3 years ago I was a variable in a family that didn't value me. Today I am the principal of my own life. I realized that no is a complete sentence and success is the only closure I ever needed. Thank you for staying with me through this journey. If this story made you feel a sense of justice, or if you've ever had to build your own path out of someone else's shadow, please hit the like button. It truly helps the channel grow and allows us to share more stories like this. I want to hear from you. Have you ever dealt with in-laws who tried to look down on you? Or have you ever had a manila folder moment where you finally proved everyone wrong? Drop your story in the comments below. I try to read as many as I can. And let us know, where are you watching from today and what time is it there? If you haven't already, please subscribe and hit the notification bell so you don't miss the next story of vindication. I've linked 2 more videos in the description that I think you'll really connect with. I'm Chandra, and I'll see you in the next one.